The news came out that Northwest is going to be doing her own album.
Called Elementary School Dropout. Definitely not playing off of Kanye at all.
Welcome to Get to the Hook. This is our podcast we do every week. It's about fishing. This the hook. No, I'm kidding. It's not about fishing. It's about music. That's the hook we're talking about. The hook in a great song. And every week we are covering different topics about popular music. This week, our topic comes to us courtesy of one Kanye West, or should I say Ye.
Or Northwest.
Yes, because we're talking about the next generation singers. When you have someone who is a huge success in the music business and then their spawn decide that they want to get into the music business, which I think is a questionable decision in some cases, which we'll get into. But yes, the news came out that Northwest is going to be doing her own album.
Called Elementary School Dropout. Definitely not playing off of Kanye at all there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love the title of the album. I do question where a 10-year-old's music is going to go.
Well, we kind of know. We got a taste. She's actually already had a top 40 hit from Kanye's new Vultures album. She has a song called Talking that she's featured on. She got a featured credit. Song debuted at number 30. So this is what North's rapping sounds like.
It's your bestie, Miss Westy. Don't tryna test me.
I will say what she does have going for her. I don't know what the album's going to be like. I don't know what her rap's going to be like. She's got a great producer.
Great producer.
Who's going to give her fire beats without a doubt. I mean, can you envision an argument between North and Ye? And she's like, no. I heard that beat that you gave to so-and-so. No, that's for me.
I don't want some leftover Ty Dolla $ign beat. It's my album. Yeah, I kind of like in that song that she's trying to sound kind of hard and tough, but lyrically, it's kind of braggy for a 10-year-old.
Right.
She's not trying to sound like she's 25.
Right. I just wonder where they're going to go. Is the album intended? Is the audience going to be kids, or do they try to go? I don't know where it's going to go. And honestly, I don't think Kanye knows right now where it's going to go either.
Is it even going to come out? I mean, that's always the question with Kanye. Will it come out? Maybe.
Yeah. Worry about Vultures 2 before you worry about.
Yeah, I don't know. But so we'll see with Northwest. You know, she's 10, got a whole lot of future ahead of her. I want to look at some of these. Like you said, it's really tough. And it's the nepotism thing of course, having a certain name will get you through the door. But then it's really hard to make that name your own if it's already somebody else's.
Right. Especially if your parent had tremendous success. Now you're fighting an uphill battle.
Right. And so there are a handful, I think, where the child actually equaled or surpassed the parent. And I think the most obvious one, Miley Cyrus.
Yes.
I mean, there's just kind of no doubt. But I think it's weird. I think to like younger millennials and Gen Z, they know Billy Ray for two things. One, maybe they know he was on Old Town Road,
right? Which
technically he does have the longest running #1 hit of all time. And they know him as Miley's dad.
Right. They don't realize the music success he had, even beyond the one enormous hit.
Yeah, let's play a little bit. If you don't know this song, I don't know how you don't know this song, but
where you been?
Achy Breaky Heart.
Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. I just don't think he'd understand.
And,
it takes me back to a very questionable era in my college days.
You loved that, didn't you?
I was living in no, it's not that here's the thing. I was living in Arizona. I don't have the wait, I do have the album only because I was DJing events in Arizona at the time.
Sure.
And I had to have it.
And you had to listen to it by yourself to get familiar with it, obviously.
Just to know where to cue it up,
but
that's
the thing. What I was saying is how big he was, not just that song. Because if you think of him as a one-hit wonder, he really wasn't. The album that song came from was called Some Gave All. It was #1 for 17 straight weeks. Sold millions of copies. He had a bunch of country hits.
Legitimate success.
And then as his career kind of tapered off a bit, his best second act was Miley Cyrus.
Right.
And getting her on Hannah Montana, getting himself on the show. He did a duet with her. It was like kind of a comeback hit for him. But I think as big as he was, and he was, beyond just having a hit, he was a pop culture thing.
Yes.
The mullet, and he was in Dolly Parton's Romeo video as sort of a boy toy kind of thing for her. He embraced it. It's clearly he doesn't mind cheesiness. But Miley has so surpassed him.
Yeah, and I think she has surpassed him, but you have to give him his, and I don't know if this is what you were leading up to, that he did have success as an artist. He had one huge hit, but maybe his biggest success is launching her career.
Right.
Because of where she's gone with it is tremendous. And that she was able to completely, maybe the TV show helped her build enough of an audience that then she could easily surpass him once she got more into music.
Right. And because he always had that sort of stink of novelty about him, I think, with people at the time. And
Right.
she could have had that with Hannah Montana. But then once she got, once she started releasing music as Miley Cyrus and sort of divorced herself from Hannah Montana, she came with bangers.
And started
Party in the
doing-
USA and
Right.
The Climb and We Can't Stop and Wrecking Ball. Like, she just was racking up these hits and got really respected. Now she's won a Record of the Year Grammy.
Yeah.
And did not thank him.
Well, that's, the whole family riff
Right.
that's going on there. And that's another, check
And
out TMZ.com for that.
Speaking of that family quickly, you should also mention, because Miley sort of overshadows it now in Billy Ray, multiple of his children have been successful. Noah, Miley's sisters, had some hits. Trey Cyrus, Billy's son, I think, with a different woman, not Tish.
Right.
His group Metro Station had a top 10 hit called Shake It. So
Oh, really? Did not know that. I
yeah,
saw
the
Noah
Cyrus is like a
Cyrus.
dynasty. They're the Jacksons.
I saw Noah Cyrus last year at a festival here in the LA area and Beach Life Ranch. She's good. She's a really good performer. Like, and I just felt like I was discovering her as a live performer, and I feel like she is, as we were talking about whether or not you're overshadowed by your parent, you can also be overshadowed by your sibling,
Oh, definitely.
as the Jacksons
Right.
will tell you, and Noah Cyrus might say also. But she was a great live performer.
I mean, that's been drilled into those kids' heads since they were little.
Right.
And that's why a lot of these, you'd think they would be pretty successful, some of these kids, because their parent, not just the contacts they could give them and things like that, like having producers for Northwest and
Sure.
stuff, but they grow up being able to perform and do all these things.
Yeah.
Either they inherited it genetically or the parent can teach them. The next person I want to talk about that I kind of debate, like, I think she did equal him, but Natalie and Nat King Cole. She won the Best New Artist Grammy. It's weird because he died young. I mean, so did she,
Yeah.
relatively.
Yeah.
But he's like this sort of legendary figure.
Right.
And she was somewhat always in his shadow, but her career was remarkable. Like I said, won the Best New Artist Grammy, had a ton of hits. But oddly,
Isn't it because, I mean, when he was making his hits, there just wasn't, the landscape wasn't as large for pop music. And so it's easier for him. It's sort of like being a TV star in the 70s when there were 4 channels,
Right.
As opposed to doing it now when you have so many options.
it's harder to stand out. And also
Right.
because he was one of the first black superstars. He has a place in history that she just never could have had.
Right.
But also, I think now, it was not her biggest chart hit, but I think a thing she's most remembered for now was the duet she did with her dad. In 1991, it was Natalie and Nat King Cole doing Unforgettable.
That someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable.
So that was just sort of cementing the family legacy there, and that was a huge hit for her. Won a bunch of Grammys. The album was #1. But remember the novelty of that? That it was like, oh, it's her singing with him, but he's
Right.
been dead for decades. She didn't do that first.
Really?
Another one on this list, Hank Williams Jr.
Hank Williams Jr. did a song with,
You don't remember There's a Tear in My Beer?
I don't.
Oh, it came out in '89. It was an early '50s vinyl rip of an unreleased Hank Williams song, and Hank Jr. made a duet out of it, and it sounded a little bit like this.
There's a tear in my beer, 'cause I'm crying for you, dear.
That was like a groundbreaking thing. They made that in '88. It came out in early '89, so it was like this weird, trippy thing. That's another one I was saying, like how Natalie.
One I wouldn't have heard. I'm gonna plead New York East Coast
Yeah, okay.
ignorance.
Yeah, I was in West Virginia, so
Right,
I definitely
so there
remember
you
that
go.
song. Well, and the video was a big deal too because they did this digital thing where they took old footage of Hank Williams Sr. and then had somebody lip sync and like dub the
Right,
mouth,
right.
and then Hank Jr. performed with him, which in 1989 was a
Yeah.
big deal. He's another one that it's commercially success-wise, he's as big as his dad. But Hank Williams is like a mythological figure in country
Right.
music, dying so young in the back of a car, drinking
Right.
to death. Like, he created modern country music. And it's sort of that same thing. Like I was saying, how Nat King Cole was the first black superstar,
Yeah.
At a time when the country was very segregated. How do you compete with a ghost?
You can't.
Like Hank
you
Williams Jr. could never fight that.
You can make as many hits as you can, but you're never going to be. They're never going to say you're the legend. You know, if Michael, and we're not talking about her because Paris Jackson doesn't have popular hits.
She
at
does
this
her own
point.
thing. Yeah.
She does her own thing, and maybe that's smart for her because no matter what she did, it would never ever.
Because, yeah, what does she try and do? Like his brand of dance pop? You're
Right.
never going to be better at that than him.
Right, which is why maybe it is wise to just do your own thing. But, you know, like you said, Natalie Cole and Hank Williams are perfect examples of people who have very successful careers.
Yeah, hugely successful. And also because they have the name, like not just the last name, but Natalie, Hank Jr. It's a constant reminder. One who actually did not have that kind of love for his father that I think, this might be an American bias here because Enrique and Julio Iglesias.
Yes.
Julio was massive worldwide. It's like soccer. Like, you know, it's big in the rest of the world, but it's you know it here, but it's not as big. Enrique was much bigger here. But he did not use the last name Iglesias when he started sending demos out.
Oh, really?
And that was part of the rift. He and Julio didn't speak for over a decade.
Yeah, I know that was not.
And there's also been rumors that Julio was jealous of Enrique's success and kind of resented it a little bit. So there was no love lost there.
I would get that. That would make sense. It's sort of like when you're Julio Iglesias, and I know Julio Iglesias more from when I was in Jamaica.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, my uncle played Julio Iglesias records all the time. And
reggae and Julio Iglesias?
Yeah. Well, my uncle had a very eclectic music taste. But yeah, I knew him more from Jamaica, and he was very popular there. But I'd come back home to New York, and nobody was playing Julio Iglesias.
And his only really huge hit in America was To All the Girls I've Loved Before with Willie Nelson.
Right.
There's another weird Willie Nelson fact. He had a hit with Julio Iglesias.
Right. And so then he sees his son, who, you know, they have a rocky relationship to say the least. And then his son just takes off and is a huge success
Cranks
in
out
America.
#1
And
hits.
he's like, well, what about me?
Yeah.
What I've been at this for decades, and I can't get that kind of success.
Because when you operate at that level, you've got to be so competitive. I think even with your own child.
Yes.
The flip side of that, I want to talk about. Do you know who Thomas Rhett is?
I do know the name.
Big country star. He's had over 20 #1 hits on the country airplay chart in the past decade. Huge star. His dad, Rhett Akins, had a country career in the 90s. This is actually when I worked in country radio. That's why this is so burned in my brain. He had a #1 song called Don't Get Me Started. Sounded a little bit like this.
Hey, darling, if you don't want to hear how the water's parted, then don't get me started.
So he had a few, I mean, it's very 90s country right
Right.
there. He had a few hits as an artist, lasted a couple years, then it sort of tailed off. Then he was smart enough to go into songwriting.
Okay.
And Rhett Akins has written over 30 #1 country hits at this point, a lot of them for his son. Also, he's written hits for Luke Bryan, Blake Shelton, Jason Aldean, not that song, Morgan Wallen. And so Thomas Rhett, who was born in 1990, was like a little kid when his dad was popular.
Right.
But then when he got old enough to do his own stuff, his dad's like, I have these songs for you. And they just, between the two of them, cranked out #1 hits.
Now, that's a nice, there's a good family relationship. There you go. That's nice, warm. Hey, son, here you go. Here's some hits. You go ahead and do it. Like,
Also, it makes me a lot of money, too, because I get other writing royalties.
I don't have to go out and tour.
Right.
You go do the touring and all that stuff. I'll just keep writing hits.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good family business to have there. Some other people we just have to mention quickly. Staying in country. Remember Pam Tillis? Was a huge singer. Her dad, Mel Tillis, was a big star. Also famous because he stuttered when he talked. Liza Minnelli and Judy Garland. Got to mention them.
Obviously.
Got to mention them. I mean, just as famous. But there were a lot of people that I think had hits. They had a moment, maybe one big album or a couple songs. But like we were saying earlier, they were never going to be bigger than their parent.
I think this is like the fine line, and you mentioned this earlier, the fine line of nepotism opening the door for you, but then people will hold it against you as well. And so you can have a hit here or there, but maybe you're not making it because people feel like, oh, they don't deserve it because they're only here because of their dad or their mom.
Right. A famous one from the 60s, Nancy Sinatra, a very iconic song to this day, These Boots Are Made for Walking.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows that song, the #1 hit. Her biggest hit was a duet with her dad. And also such a creepy song. Something Stupid was #1 for 4 weeks in the late 60s. This is Something Stupid.
I don't know why you think this is creepy, Eric.
Then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you.
Because the lyrics, it's not a father-daughter duet. It's about drinking wine and your perfume fills my head and all this. It's a love song. It is definitely a guy trying to sleep with a woman.
What's the song? Yes, I know,
I mean,
and
it
I've heard
clearly
this
is.
recently. Someone else who sang "Walking Hand in Hand with the One Laughter in the Rain."
Oh, I like you just singing.
Yeah, I was just trying to
We're not
sort
going to
it
do sound
out.
clips. You're just going to sing it.
Yeah, I'll just sing them.
Yeah.
"Laughter in the Rain."
Neil Sedaka.
Neil Sedaka.
And his
His
daughter.
daughter
Dara Sedaka.
recorded a version of that, and the song sounds great. I actually like their version, the sound of it better. But then when it's like it's just weird for father and daughter to be like,
well, that was like something stupid. Like the whole thing is like basically like just trying to hook up, and then he ruins it by telling her he loves her. Like you don't want to throw the L word out too soon when you're trying to hook up. And also it's weird because it's not a duet. Like he sings some and she sings some. It's almost
It's a
like two different
response.
songs, but no, they're singing at the same time over each other. It's like her vocals are going and his are going, and they're just playing over each other. But it was a huge hit, and she had some hits for a few years. But you're never going to be
you're
bigger
not
than
going to
Frank
be the
Sinatra.
chairman, right?
You are not. Early '90s, we had a couple of them. Wilson Phillips.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this song. This is "Hold On" by Wilson Phillips.
You hold on for one more day. Can you hold on?
I see you all bopping your heads over there, man.
Yeah, don't lie. If I know it was Bridesmaids it was in, right?
Yes.
At the end of it, when they show up and sing it. That song has endured. So Wilson Phillips, it was two sisters and their friend, Carney and Wendy Wilson and China Phillips, who were the daughters of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys and John and Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas.
That's a rock pedigree.
That is. And the thing, I think now people only remember Hold On maybe from Wilson Phillips, younger people, but they were huge in 1990. Their first album, millions of copies sold, 3 #1 hits on that record.
Wait a second.
Yeah, Hold On,
And I
Release Me,
was
and You're in Love.
very much conscious and living my life at that point. I don't remember them having 3 #1 hits.
If you heard them, you'd be like, oh, I remember this. But they sounded like easy listening radio filler in the early 90s. But still, they had 3 #1 hits,
All right.
a couple other top 10s, and were nominated for Best New Artist. And at the time, had a really strong shot. It was between them and Mariah Carey.
Ooh.
And now it seems, obviously, it's Mariah Carey, and she did win. But in that moment,
Sure.
Wilson Phillips was a viable thing. But the thing is, they had that moment. They were really big, but they were never going to be bigger than the Beach Boys.
No, they weren't going to be that. I don't think anybody ever expected them to be that, right? I mean,
I think that's why people were surprised by how successful they were. Like, oh, this isn't just a novelty or a joke. Like, you're really talented.
catchy hooks.
And it just didn't last. I don't know. After 2 albums, it was that was it.
Yeah.
Another one kind of like that, and I have a hot take on this one, but Jacob Dylan of the Wallflowers. Remember them? Later 90s?
I do. I actually liked them a lot.
A lot.
I really did. And I just remember being like, oh, this is really cool that Bob Dylan has a kid and by the way, who looked very much like him.
Sounded like
him, but actually had better stage presence as a...
That's my hot take on this.
Maybe isn't saying a lot, but...
I know this is like musical blasphemy, but we're going to play a little bit of their biggest hit, One Headlight. I will take this song over any Bob Dylan song any day of the week. I know like that's a horrible thing to say. I respect him. He's incredibly talented.
Right.
But partly it's my like Gen X nostalgia, because whenever I hear that song, it's immediately 1997 for me. But I would rather hear One Headlight over Blowing in the Wind or Rainy Day Women any day of the week.
Let's take Eric back to 1997.
Let's play a little bit.
We can drive it home with one headlight.
This is a solid groove.
It's
It's
such
just
a vibe.
a solid
That little
groove.
shuffling beat.
Yeah.
And then I think of Bob Dylan like,
I'm with you,
blaspheming.
man.
I know it. I know
No,
I am.
I'm with you on the blasphemy. But I'm out on Bob Dylan after seeing him live, allegedly live.
Oh.
I mean, technically, he was on the stage, and maybe when he was younger, he was an incredible performer. But I don't.
Was
think
he?
so.
I think it was all about the words and
was-
He was never like an electrifying
Right.
performer in that sense. I don't think you had to be into the words and all that.
So what we're saying is Jacob Dylan was done dirty.
I
He
think
should have had a
so.
bigger career.
And I think it was when Bob Dylan finally won the Album of the Year Grammy. It was the year that the Wallflowers album would have been nominated.
Oh, really?
He still got overshadowed by his dad from the beginning. But I'm Team Wallflowers. I'm not going to lie.
I'm with you.
One of them I want to talk about, this is the rare triple generation. And this goes from the 30s up into the 90s.
All right. So we're talking royalty here, whoever. we're
Royalty.
talking.
This is radio royalty, TV royalty, music royalty. Back in the 30s, going way back on this one, there was a band leader, Ozzie Nelson, and his
All
wife,
right.
Harriet, was his singer. They had a bunch of hits throughout the 1930s. The hits started to dry up in the 40s.
Mhm.
So they just took their family and moved to radio, because this was before television, and they had a radio show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet.
Right.
And then when TV started, let's go to TV.
They go to TV.
They go to TV, and that show was on for over a decade. And
They
it
have a son.
launched Ricky Nelson,
Mm-hmm.
who also, fortunately for them in the early TV days, was very handsome. This is my mom's all-time teen crush. And Ricky was bigger than his dad. And this fun fact, the Billboard Hot 100, when it launched in 1958, he had the very first #1 song on the chart.
There's some interesting
Fun
trivia
fact.
you can use.
It is this song, Poor Little Fool.
Poor little fool. Oh yeah, I was a fool.
He was going to tap into the Elvis thing a little
Sure.
bit. Sure.
Okay.
But he
All
had hits into the 70s.
Yeah.
Sadly died in a plane crash in the mid-80s. But then he had twin sons with
Which I got to tell
bright
you.
white blonde hair,
Yes.
Matthew and Gunnar Nelson.
And I learned the history because I'm too young and vibrant to know about
Yeah.
Ozzy, about the first generation of the Nelson Empire. So I didn't even know about them. And my intro to them are Gunnar and
Matthew.
Gunnar and Matthew.
Like Wilson Phillips, they came out of the gate guns blazing. Their first single shot to #1 in the fall of 1990. It was this song, I Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection.
I can't live without your love and affection. I can't face another night on my own.
I don't own it, but my roommate at the time in college did. And so I just played his CD. That's all.
There
I did
were a
play.
bunch of hits on that CD.
Really?
After the Rain was a top 10 hit. Only Time Will
remember that
Tell. They
one.
had some hits. And it seemed like, they're going to keep the Nelson legacy going. And then it took them 5 years to release their next album. I think there might have been some label
The moment
politics or
was
whatever.
over.
And then it's the mid-90s. Grunge and gangster rap happened. Nelson was yesterday's news.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Too bad,
it's
so
rare to
sad.
have the 3 generations that can do that.
That is impressive. That's what you call an empire.
That's
You go 3 generations.
the Marleys are like that.
Yes. The
Bob, Ziggy, Lauryn Hill, who was not a Marley, but her son YG's having a hit now.
YGs haven't hit. Plus, the Marleys that's a whole other. It's crazy to me how many of them have had genuine success. I mean, obviously, none of
not
them are
his.
Bob, but and again, it's sort of like the Sinatra thing, but it's even more impressive in that there are so many Marleys, and so many of them have gotten into music and have either several albums or at least one hit.
Right.
I just find it really,
Imani,
really impressive.
Damien Jr. Gong, like
Yeah,
a lot of hits from that family.
have big hits. And I by the way, back in the 90s, it was popular to besmirch Ziggy Marley because
Was
he
it?
wasn't. Yeah, because he wasn't. So when Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers started hitting with Look Who's Dancing,
Tomorrow
Conscious
People.
Party, Tomorrow People, everyone, and this was certainly in Jamaica, and even I heard it on the East Coast a lot. He's not Bob, and his music wasn't roots reggae like Bob Marley did,
Because he wasn't Bob.
and he wasn't
He
Bob,
grew up
and
very
he
differently.
and he accepted that and made music that had tinges of reggae, of traditional reggae in it, but was his own thing with an R&B rock flavor to it.
Right.
And I always thought that was a great decision on his part to not try to make the exact same kind of music.
And some of the other people we're going to talk about, that's sort of their thing. Like Ravi Shankar, who was a famous artist in the 60s, his daughter, Nora Jones.
I remember I had no idea for years
A
that Nora
long time
Jones
I didn't know that.
was Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, her music is nothing like his. She seemed too young to me to be his daughter. Maybe
Right.
he had her later in life, but her album "Come Away with Me" was a massive hit. A funny one I want to talk about: the Gordies.
Yeah.
This is another dynasty. 2 half brothers who both had huge hits, 25 years apart.
Right.
So Berry Gordy, of course, the founder of Motown,
Right.
the architect
Legend,
of modern popular
icon.
music.
Right.
In the mid '80s, his son Kennedy Gordy,
Who went by Rockwell. Uh-huh.
Rockwell wanted to be an artist. And the thing is, Rockwell is not an outstanding singer necessarily, but this is 1984, and Berry Gordy has Michael Jackson's phone number.
Right.
So he calls up, he's like, Michael, come sing a hook on this song. So
You want to talk about getting to the hook.
yeah, it was kind of hard to pick a soundbite for this song because you want to hear the chorus, but it's mostly Michael Jackson.
Right.
But everybody knows this song. It gets popular every Halloween still. This is Somebody's Watching Me.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Who's playing tricks on me?
You heard Rockwell at the end there. Who's playing
Yeah.
tricks on me? All right.
He had that kind of, he almost kind of rapped almost. It's not a rap
Yeah.
song, but it was sort of this spoken, and it sort of tapped into the thriller kind of horror movie thing. That's why it comes back at Halloween every
Right.
year. I remember as a kid hearing that, and I was like, God, that guy sounds like Michael Jackson. But why doesn't he sound like him on the verses?
Because when the
Get
song
it.
came out, they didn't say anything about Michael Jackson.
No,
They
he's
said
not in the
this is
video. He's
Rockwell.
not credited. Now, if somebody walks by the studio when you're recording a song, you get a feature credit.
Right.
Back then, you could sing the entire hook and you wouldn't get a credit,
Even if you're Michael Jackson.
even if you're Michael Jackson. So Berry Gordy had a bunch of kids with a bunch of ladies, and fast forward into the early 2010s, Rockwell's half-brother, Red Foo,
Mm-hmm.
and this is so complicated, Red Foo and his nephew, Sky Blue, who is Berry Gordy's grandson, start the duo LMFAO and score one of the biggest hits of all time, Party Rock Anthem.
All right, wait. How do you say it's one of the biggest
Because it
hits of all
spent
time?
over a year on the charts and spent 6 weeks at number 1 and like half a year in the top 10. It was a massive, massive hit.
Okay.
Party rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time. Yeah.
I don't care. I still like that song.
What
I know it's
year was
hokey.
that?
That was 2011 when it hit number 1.
Okay,
It bumped
just-
Adele's Rolling in the Deep out of number 1.
Maybe to your point about it being one of the biggest hits of all time, it is still, to this day, a friend of mine who lives in New Orleans, this is still a thing that we do. Anytime either of us is out somewhere and that song comes on, you must record video and send it to the person. Because it was just, at the time, was that one of those ubiquitous hits. You heard it everywhere you went.
And you probably
it was
still would if
haunted.
either one of us actually still went out.
Yeah.
But-
It's been a few years since I sent.
that is-
no,
I
no,
think-
no, no. I sent Emily one of those last year. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is one of those forever party songs. No matter how cheesy it is, it's like Stayin' Alive or Billie Jean. There's just certain songs that will always get people excited.
Indeed.
Also, quickly to the weirdness of the whole family tree there. I always thought this was so weird. Technically, it's not. But Red Foo, when he was a teenager, briefly dated Tracy Ellis Ross.
Okay.
The two of them are
Tracy
not related
Ellis.
at all.
Right. Not related, but Tracy Ellis Ross, daughter of
is
Diana Ross,
Ross's daughter,
who did
had a child with Berry Gordy.
right.
So Red Foo and Tracy Ellis Ross dated. They are not related, but they do share a half sibling. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird.
Oh, that is.
Again, there's no relation between the two of them, but that would be just weird enough for me that I'd be like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Although she is Tracy Ellis
a
Ross.
little too close.
A little too close. There's some people who, kids who got really famous, people didn't know their parents were famous. Alu Dara was a jazz cornetist,
Oh.
really successful in jazz.
Okay.
His son is Nas. Nas the rapper.
I had
Legendary
no idea.
rapper.
I didn't know that Nas had music. I didn't know
He
that it
did a
was in his
song
family
featuring
tree.
his dad in the mid 2000s, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" Did not know. Another one, Don Cherry was a jazz trumpeter, really successful. Two of his children also very successful.
I know one, Nana Cherry.
Nena Cherry had a song called "Buffalo Stance," was a huge
Mm-hmm.
hit in '89. You do know the other one, although I'm curious because I was talking to Derek about this, our lawyer here. He did not know these two were brother and sister. Maybe you don't know their brother and sister.
Maybe I don't.
Eagle Eye Cherry, Save Tonight. You did not know that apparently.
I
if you're
did
listening
not
to this,
know
you
that they
can't
were
see
siblings.
The shocked look on Charles'
Yeah.
face right now.
Wow.
Yeah, they are brother
Okay.
and sister, and Don was their dad. And then Nena's daughter Mabel had a chart song a couple years ago, so they're a multi-generational hit-making act now.
Well, all right.
And we got to
They
mention
are family.
and Drake,
And then there's Drake. Yes.
whose dad Dennis Graham is a musician.
Musician, yeah.
The bigger thing is his,
His uncle, Larry Graham, is.
Larry Graham, who invented slap bass. He was in
Yes.
Sly and the Family Stone. Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again.
Mm-hmm.
One of the funkiest songs ever.
Absolutely.
So Drake's got that pedigree. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you're Miley Cyrus.
it's better to have.
Sometimes
I think the bottom line here, it's better to have it because
you will get noticed, and that's the
you
hardest
get
part.
noticed. You may get a deal. It gets you some foot in the door. Now, what you do with it,
Well, it's sort of, it's like in the YouTube age and now the TikTok age, you just got to get noticed.
right?
If you can get attention, and some people will do horrible, awful, dumb things to get noticed, but no attention is bad attention. And if you have that name, people are automatically going to be like, "Oh, what does this sound like?"
Right.
Like we're going to listen to Northwest's album. If she wasn't Kanye's daughter, if she was just a random 10-year-old putting an album out, same reason we listened to Willow Smith's "Whip My Hair" when it came out. It's Will Smith's daughter.
Boy, we did listen to that and
She had a good career though.
burned into my head.
Her song "Meet Me at Our Spot," you know that song?
I don't.
From like 2 or 3 years ago. It
Well,
got her
that's why
back
I
in the
don't
top
know
40. Oh. That's a great song.
Really?
I love that song.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
All right. So before we wrap up this episode of Get to the Hook, I want to talk about what's on the hook this week. I think that's how I'll try to think of an exact title for this segment. But something that some musical anecdote from our the previous week. I thought about this because I went to a show on Sunday night in Long Beach that was eye-opening to me and endlessly entertaining. There's a tour going on called Blues Is All Right, and it was, ironically, I didn't know really of any of these artists. I think I'd heard of King George a little bit,
Okay.
but
You just went just to go?
no, a friend of mine in Wisconsin, uh, a a white woman named Jill in Wisconsin,
So you went to Wisconsin to
how
go to
I
a blues
found
tour
out
with a white woman.
a blues tour in Long Beach with artists Pokey Bear,
Okay.
King George, like I mentioned, Nelly, Tiger Travis, Tucka, Lenny Williams, and Theodis Ealey, who can play guitar. Theodis Ealey and Lenny Williams were like the elder
Lenny Williams, I
statesmen.
know.
Yeah, the elder statesmen, and they came out and they played sort of more traditional blues. The other artists are kind of like a blues, R&B, soul, 70s kind of
Yeah, you
mix.
sent me Pokey Bear. I was not familiar with him, but you said Snoop Dogg's his #1 fan.
Actually, Snoop Dogg showed up. So they did Saturday and Sunday night. Snoop Dogg showed up on stage because he loves these guys on Saturday night. On Sunday night, Too Short was there. In fact, was seated right in front of me at one point. And I said, "What's up?" to him, and he turned around. He's like, "Oh, I had to do a double take. I didn't realize. What are you doing here?" And he went
what
up
are
on
you doing
stage.
here?
Yeah, I was like, "What are you doing here?"
If your show
But
can draw Too Short and Snoop Dogg, you're doing something right.
these guys are so entertaining. It's like I guess I would call it old school players kind of music. Even the one woman on the bill, Nelly Tiger Travis, her songs are called Mr. Sexy Man, If I Back It Up. So you kind of get the
Grown
idea
folks
here.
music, as it's called.
Pokey Bear, we got to play just a little bit of Pokey Bear. It's called My Side Piece. And everybody, there's 3,000 people in the theater. Everybody knew the lyrics. Everybody's singing along. Just really entertaining.
That's a catchy song.
And I will be listening to more Pokey Bear, more King George, more Nelly, all of them. Nelly, Tiger, Travis.
I got to listen to some more Pokey Bear. You sent that to me, and I'm into it.
It's just fun music. It's really fun. And on that note, we will end on some fun music. That's going to do it for this episode. We will see you next week.